What's up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing 5 reasons why I am Catholic. Maybe you're somebody who's considering Catholicism. I hope this video is a helpful resource for you. I know when I was a Protestant and I was looking into Catholicism, videos like this were very helpful for me. So hopefully this can likewise be helpful for others. Before we get into all that, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel here on YouTube, and you're going to want to stick around for the last reason because it's a reason that does not apply to any other Christian tradition at all. And it's probably not what you're thinking it is. So stick around for that. Without further ado, let's just get right into this list. So reason number 1 is that Catholicism, very simply, is true. This is, in my opinion, the most important reason, and it's probably the reason that I could spend the most time talking about, but I'll try to keep it very brief. So when I say Catholicism is true, what does that mean? There's different ways we could approach it. We could come at it from an atheist perspective or come at it from a Protestant perspective. If we're starting at the presupposition that God exists, if we already agree on that much, we could say, okay, yeah, God exists, but in which religion is the true God worshipped? I think pretty easily you can say that is Christianity. The miracles in Christianity, not only in the Bible itself, like the resurrection, which is highly evidential, but also miracles in more recent times, like healing miracles, Eucharistic miracles, happen in Christianity, and I haven't seen anything even analogous in other religions. For example, I did a video a while back where I reviewed other religions and looked at some Hindu miracles, and those were very unconvincing, pretty comedically unconvincing, you might say. The miracles in Christianity are highly evidential. We have medical records, we have forensic analysis, we have scientific documents attesting to the validity and the reality of miracles in the Christian tradition. Because of that, I think it's pretty obvious that if there is a God, the Christian religion is the true religion. And now with that all agreed upon, obviously there's going to be a lot of people that don't agree upon that, but if you're interested in Catholicism, I'm presuming that you already agree on that basic principle. Then the reason that Catholicism is true over other Christian traditions like Protestantism or Orthodoxy is primarily because of the papacy, the authority that the Pope has uniquely over the rest of the church. This is something that goes back into Scripture when Jesus gave Peter the command to lead his sheep, to tend his sheep, to feed his sheep. That was a command that was uniquely given to Peter as the first pope. And Jesus also gave him the keys to the kingdom, which is analogous to in times of monarchies, the king would give the keys to his kingdom to his second in command. So in that way, Jesus was establishing that Peter is the rock on which he will build his church, which is what he said about Peter, and that authority passed down to the successors of Peter, meaning the following bishops of Rome after Peter. So this is clearly a belief based in Scripture and also based in the early traditions of the church. This is not something that came about later that the Catholic Church just added. A lot of Protestants tend to think that Catholics just added stuff later on, but actually this stuff has very, very deep roots in Scripture and also in the very early church. So the papacy being true means that obviously Protestantism can't be true because Protestants of all denominations deny the authority of the Pope. And it also means that Orthodoxy cannot be true because the Orthodox also deny the authority of the Pope. Another misconception is that we think the Pope is always infallible. We don't believe that the Pope is infallible most of the time. In fact, the Pope is only infallible when speaking from the seat of Peter, or ex cathedra, as it is also called. This is a privilege of the Pope that has only been used very few times, and the last time it was used was in the 50s. The current Pope, the previous Pope, and the Pope before that did not use the privilege to speak infallibly. The last Pope to speak ex cathedra from the seat of Peter was Pope Pius XII, when he defined the Assumption of Mary as an article of faith. So we do believe that the current Pope, the Pope before him, and the Pope before him, every Pope is not infallible most of the time, though they do have authority to settle disputes among the church or define new practices or things like that. But if the Pope says something in an interview with 60 Minutes, for example, that you don't like, you are free to reject that. He's not infallible all the time. Another reason I say that Catholicism is true over other traditions of the Catholic Church, especially over Protestantism, is that Catholicism has the true canon of Scripture. When the canon of Scripture was defined very early on in the 4th century, it was always defined to include the deuterocanonical books, which are the books between the Old Testament and the New Testament. These include 1st and 2nd Maccabees, Tobit, Song of Solomon, Sirach, and 1st and 2nd Ezra. I think I'm getting that list right. But the Protestants during the Protestant Revolution removed those books because they taught things that the Protestants didn't like. And by the way, Martin Luther wanted to remove more books, including the book of James, Revelation, Hebrews, and many, many others, simply because he didn't like what they taught. And so he thought,
they can't possibly be Scripture because I disagree with them. And if I disagree with them, then we got to just take it out of the Bible.
Not a good reason to change the canon of Scripture, and it's a huge reason why Protestantism is largely false, because I don't believe you can just add or take away from the Bible to fit your beliefs. I think rather your beliefs should be formed to the Bible, not the other way around. And like I said, this first reason is something that we could spend a lot of time on, but I'll probably just leave it there because we can get into a lot of stuff. All the things that Protestants take issue with Catholics, like the prayer to saints, the veneration of Mary, the idea that Mary was sinless and that she was bodily assumed into heaven, that she was a perpetual virgin, the idea of purgatory, the idea of the papacy, like I said. All of these things, and probably some others that I'm forgetting, are things that the very early church believed. They are things that we do find in Scripture, but I will leave that for another video. Maybe I have defended those things in other videos, so check those out. But I'll do some more specific videos on these issues. If you guys think that's a good idea, let me know in the comments. And the second reason that I am a Catholic is because of the depth of the prayer life that Catholicism offers. You might notice behind me here, we got these beautiful statues. We got this beautiful rosary. We got these beautiful prayer cards. There are many, many different prayers that you can do regularly as a Catholic to deepen your faith and to seek the intercession of different saints and to ask different saints to pray for you. There is no shortage of practices that you can find in the Catholic Church. And the beautiful thing is that you're not commanded to do any of these. You're not commanded to pray the rosary. You're not commanded to pray to any saint or anything like that. You don't have to. But the beautiful thing is that any one of the devotions that speak to you, you can just take that on and pray it regularly, which I think is very valuable because different devotions are going to appeal to different people. Not everybody wants to pray the rosary. Some people want to pray the Jesus prayer, which is very common in the Byzantine rite of the Catholic Church. Some people want to pray the St. Joseph rosary, and there's many, many others. If you're bored as a Catholic, that is purely your fault because you can always find something to be praying, something to be doing as a Catholic. You can do things like go to Eucharistic adoration, which is very beautiful. You can go to a Eucharistic procession. There are rosary marches where people march around a church, typically through the streets, praying the rosary out loud, which is a beautiful expression of faith. There's just always something to do, and I love it. I think it's beautiful. You cannot, no matter how hard you try, explore the entirety of the depths of Catholic prayer. The third reason why I'm a Catholic is because of the consistency of the beliefs of the Catholic Church, especially on social issues. This is so important, but even on theological issues, we see many Protestant denominations who just deny truths that were accepted by all Christians for 1500 plus years, especially the Eucharist. The idea that the Eucharist is a symbol, which is a prominent idea in almost all of Protestantism, unless you're talking about Anglicans or Lutherans, and probably some others that I'm forgetting. But the idea that the Eucharist is a symbol is a novel teaching that came about in the 1500s because Zwingli and the other reformers just couldn't wrap their heads around the fact that this is the true body and blood of Christ like he said it is. And this is another example of how Protestants, though they claim to be sola scriptura, are actually not, because Jesus clearly says in John chapter 6, "If you do not eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no life in you." And he also says, "Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has life in him, and I will raise him on the last day." That is very clear. And when he institutes the Eucharist, he says, "This is my body, this is my blood." And if you're going to come at the scripture with an idea that I can just define actually what he means is it's a symbol, or actually what he means is it's a representation, then you're not actually sola scriptura. You're just injecting your own opinion into the scriptures. This was one of the core things that led me to seeking out Catholicism, because I was like, why did we change the belief around the Eucharist? Because it seemed weird to us? Well, that's not really a good reason to change something. There's a lot of stuff in the Bible that seems weird. We don't just get to define it away because we don't want to deal with it. We have to accept it. And I can list many, many others, but there's also the consistency of beliefs as far as social issues that I mentioned. We are against the ending of life in the womb. That is something that the church has never budged on, will never budge on. And even in ancient times, when the church was in its very early days, we cared about those babies who were rejected by their parents and thrown out into the wilderness to be eaten by wolves or frozen to death or whatever. It was Christians, and at that time all Christians were Catholics, who saved those babies and gave them a home and raised them. And the same is true today. You look at who is the leading voice against abortion, it is Catholics, Catholic women particularly, like Lila Rose, who is the leader of probably the largest anti-abortion activist group live action, and she is a very devout Catholic. And also the consistency of beliefs in the Catholic Church on marriage, on the biological reality of our sex, on all these social issues. The Catholic Church has been consistent from its inception up until now. This leads me into my fourth reason for being Catholic, which is how the Church and Catholics are historic and current forces for change. Like I mentioned in abortion with Lila Rose, Matt Fradd, who's done a lot of great work against pornography. And this isn't just true of Catholics today, it's true of Catholics throughout all of history. Yesterday I just finished watching the movie Cabrini, which is about a Catholic nun who came to America to fight for the dignity and the rights of Italian immigrants into America. At the time that she came here, they were discriminated against, they were considered animals, not really equal to Americans of English descent. And she found children who lived in gutters and gave them a place to stay. She built a hospital, all these great things that she did for the people who other people rejected. And the Catholic Church and Catholic saints have a long and beautiful history of doing things like that, fighting for the rejected, giving them a voice, giving them a home. And there is no other branch of Christianity that has that history and that it has that same force currently in the culture. It's a very attractive attribute of the Catholic Church and was also one of the main reasons that I was always considering Catholicism. And the fifth and final reason in this list, though I could make a much longer list, is the unity and universality of the Catholic Church. This is something that you will not find in any other branch of Christianity. I don't care which one you're talking about or which Protestant denomination you want to talk about. There is no other branch of Christianity where you can go anywhere in the world and meet another member of that branch of Christianity. It doesn't exist. For example, I came from the Lutheran tradition of Christianity before becoming a Catholic, and before that I was an evangelical or non-denominational, whatever you want to call it. Neither of those traditions, Lutheranism or evangelicalism or mainline American Protestantism, is found everywhere else in the world. So as a Lutheran, when I was traveling, for example, even to other places within the country, like I went to Northern California to visit a friend, and there were no Lutheran churches in the area. There was a Catholic church in the area, which is where I went that Sunday, but especially in other parts of the world, there are not many Lutherans outside of Northern America and Germany. And similarly, there are not many evangelical Christians outside of Northern America. If you go to Japan or Vietnam or Spain or wherever you want to travel in the world, most likely you're not going to find an American evangelical church. If you do find a church that calls itself evangelical, it's going to be very different from what you're used to. Whereas with Catholicism, wherever you go in the world, you will find a Catholic church. I don't care where you go. And the beliefs of that church are going to be the same as your church. The liturgy is going to be generally the same, though maybe the instruments will be different or the style of singing will be different. But overall, the liturgy will be the same. You'll read the same scriptures as you would in your normal church. You'll partake of the same Eucharist as you would in your normal church. That cannot be said of any other church, even the Orthodox, which are very fragmented. If you're part of, for example, a Greek Orthodox church, you're not going to find many of those around the world outside of Greece, and I know there's one nearby where I live, but you're not going to find a lot of them anywhere you go. For example, if you go to Vietnam, you think you're going to find a Greek Orthodox church? Probably not. If you go to Japan, probably not. You might find Oriental Orthodox churches, but if you're part of the Oriental Orthodox Church and you go to Argentina or something, you're not going to find one there. Maybe that's not a big deal for most people. I don't know if that's just a me thing, but I love the idea that when you join the Catholic Church, you're not just joining some local congregation that has no presence anywhere else in the world, but you're joining a worldwide family of believers that no matter where you go, you can find those believers and you can find somewhere to worship and partake of the Eucharist. I just think that's beautiful. So that's more so talking about the universality of the Catholic Church. I think the unity of the Catholic Church is also very beautiful and unfound in other branches of Christianity. Like I mentioned in Protestantism, you can go from one evangelical church to another evangelical church in the same city, and you'll probably find many differences in beliefs and practices. You can do the same with Orthodox churches. You know, just because two churches are part of the same branch of Orthodoxy, like Greek Orthodox or whatever, doesn't mean that two Greek Orthodox churches are going to agree on everything. There will be differences in beliefs and probably in practices. However, with Catholicism, no matter where you go in the world, whatever Catholic you find in the world, whatever Catholic church you attend, the teachings are the same, the beliefs are the same, because we are all united in those beliefs. Again, I think it's very beautiful and very unique to Catholicism. Now, people might say that, well, there's a lot of division in the Catholic Church right now. The super traditionalist people versus the super modernist people who want to change teachings on marriage, for example, or want to ordain women as priests. And yeah, that exists, but the overall organization of the Catholic Church has not changed its teaching on any of those things. It has stood firm in its teachings for the last 2,000 years, and it will not change its teachings on those things, no matter what kind of pressure comes at it from the outside. And that cannot be said of Protestantism, because if you're in a Protestant church and you don't like what the pastor is teaching, you can just go find another church that teaches something you like. Or you can start your own church if you have enough money to lease a building and have enough of a following to attract people to show up every Sunday. You cannot do that in the Catholic Church. If you don't like the teachings of the Catholic Church, you can't just go find another church that you do like. And you can't just start your own Catholic Church, because you'll be rejected by the diocese. And I think it's that authority of the Catholic Church and consistency of the Catholic Church that leads to it being such a good force in the world, because if you're divided, there's not much you can do. But if you're united, especially globally, then you can literally change the world, and the Catholic Church has definitely done that for the better. Anyways, I might be rambling at this point, so I'm just going to end the video there. I am going to do more videos to break down some of these specific points, such as the truth of Catholicism and the truth of many beliefs within Catholicism, like praying to saints, like purgatory, and like the papacy. Let me know if there's a certain issue that you'd like me to start with on that list, or if there's a different issue entirely that you want me to talk about. Other than that, I hope this list was helpful for you. Let me know if you have any outstanding questions, but truthfully, since coming to the Catholic faith, my faith has never been deeper, and my relationship with God has never been closer. I cannot speak to how much Catholicism has changed me, and especially prayer practices like praying the rosary every day have really, really deepened my faith and changed me as a person for the better. So I hope it does the same for you. If you found this video helpful, make sure you give it a like down below, subscribe to the channel here on YouTube, and until I see you next time, God bless.